it's even weird to hear those words now, like my journey in corporate, and I'm like, I'm not too corporate, I hope, but the idea is still kind of sends chills up my spine. And I thought what I'd talk about today is a little bit, I've split it into two parts for you. So I thought the first part I'd talk about my life as sort of I started as an actor, and I'll talk a little bit about moving through that phase to the point where I am now, which is running my business called the Pickering Group. And what we do is we work inside mainly corporates, large organisations, helping people speak in front of an audience. So we do presentation skills training, public speaking training, business storytelling training, communication skills, that sort of stuff. And it's been a kind of a crazy journey. So I thought I'd talk about the first part, talking about that. We've got about 25 minutes, right? Then the second part, I thought I'd talk a little bit about, for you as creatives, what I think is really important when it comes to communicating the value of your work. I do work a bit in creative agencies / architectural firms, and what I tend to find is that people often, especially creatives, really struggle with the work is great, right? But when it comes to actually communicating the value of the work to people who might, to be fair, struggle to understand it sometimes, there can be a little bit of a disconnect. So I thought I'd give you just a couple of little tips around what might be useful to think about when it comes to that. Would that be cool with you guys? And then we've got questions at the end, right? So you can feel free to pop up any questions as we go along, because I just want it to be useful for you, I suppose. Number one. So I grew up in Tikawiti. Anybody from the King Country? No. Usually the case. And so it's a really small town just south of Hamilton, if you don't know, by the Waitemata Caves, so it's kind of the area. And I wanted to be an actor, so moved to the big smoke Hamilton, which I was really excited about as a kid, because it had two things which were really cool. One, it had Escalade and farmers, right? So you could go there, we literally would go on trips to Hamilton to ride on the Escalade with farmers. And it had a McDonald's, right? And it had a McDonald's on Victoria Street there, and those are the two really cool, exciting things. So went to do a BA in drama at Waikato, and that was really amazing. That was a really cool experience. And during that time I thought, you know, I really want to be an actor, so what would I do? I thought, well, I want to go to drama school. And I had a really encouraging professor there who said, we should apply for some drama schools in the States. So I went over to San Francisco and I applied for 5, and I got into one, Meadow School of the Arts. And I did an MFAs, which is Master of Fine Arts, so that's what they do their drama school over there. It's like an MFA degree. And so that was cool, but then I thought, well, like, when I graduated from there, every young actor wants to either go to LA or New York. That's kind of the thing to do. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm into theatre, so I was a theatre kid, so I'm going to go to New York. And I arrived in New York on September 7th, 2001. So it wasn't particularly great timing. And I was just kind of really didn't know that many people. And the morning of September 11th, I was sleeping in a room in Brooklyn, and there were no curtains on the window. I had a mattress on the floor. I was house sitting for a friend of mine who was in Chicago for a gig. And I didn't know anything was going on, but from my bedroom window, I could look across to Lower Manhattan, and I could see the tops of the Twin Towers. So when I woke up and looked out my bedroom window, the 2 towers were smoking. And it was that beautiful blue, it was like this remarkably blue sky. And it was just these 2 smokestacks trailing into the atmosphere. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I turned back to get my camera, and as I turned back, the real one had started to collapse. And I thought it was a nuclear bomb. That's what I thought it was, because all I could really see was this huge amount of smoke kind of start billowing out. And I was waiting for a shockwave to come and hit me, you know, like, to get clasped against the wall like Pompeii, and it would just be like, it really did flash through my mind. And nothing happened. So I was just this huge amount of smoke. So I ran in and turned on TV and actually found out what was going on. And having built up to this point of arriving in New York and hoping to get a job and making a living as an actor, to suddenly be faced with this as sort of a young, self-indulgent, creative person that I was, I'm like, well, that's it. What am I going to do now? Like, I'm stumped. Like, I'm not going to be able to get a job. I'm going to have to go home. And it was a really awful couple of days. And it was scary. I couldn't get in touch with my folks. And it really felt like that the world was on this kind of perilous scenario, that something terrible would happen. The cool thing about New York is that for one day, New Yorkers were actually really friendly. And you know, if you've been to New York, you know they're very gruff. They're amazing people, they're very gruff. And you know, the one day you drive to the subway and people will be talking to you, Then day 2 it was like, this bullshit's going to make me late to work, and it was over and done with. So it's an amazingly resilient place. But the second day into it, I got a phone call from a friend of mine, one of the few people that I didn't know in New York, who said, I'm understudying in this play, and it was a play called Major Barbara, which is a George Bernard Shaw play on Broadway. Does anybody know it? It's a terrible play. It's an old clunker of a play. There's not too much reason why you want to go see it. It was written between sort of just after World War I. It's about the mechanisation of war, about war being about tanks and guns and machines rather than personal combat and changes like that, Salvation Army, all those sorts of things. So he says, I'm understudying, which means that you get to go on for the lead actor who was stuck in LA. Do you want to come see the show? And I'm like, yeah, the free ticket, all good. So I turned up to see the play, and this was a Broadway show. The great Cherry Jones was in the lead role, so I don't know if you know her, she's amazing. And nobody who was supposed to see the play turned up. So this would have been a 750-seat theatre, and maybe 75 people were there. So then the stage manager comes on at the beginning of the show and says a couple of things. So this never happens. First of all, she said, everybody just come down the front, we can all kind of sit in the front stalls, let's just all kind of be a little bit closer together. Then she said, because of the circumstances, and the play really hadn't been doing well anyway, this will be the final night of the show tonight. So it was really a kind of a poignant moment. The play begins, goes into the second act, and there was a scene change. So the scene changes, and it reveals at the back of the stage the rubble of a collapsed building that was smoking. Right? So this is a play that had been created long before 9/11 happened. And it was smoking, just this rubble. You can see the audience just go like this. And then the lead actress comes on, and she climbs to the top of the rubble, and she looks out to the people who have assembled in the square below her, and she says, we've felt the very foundation of our existence crumble beneath our feet. And now we don't know who we are anymore. And the whole audience just went with this collective gasp. And we started clapping. And we just started clapping. And the actors on stage broke character, which never happens, and started clapping with us. And to this day, it's still the most amazing moment in the theatre for me. Not only was it remarkable in its time, I came out of that reassured that I'd taken the right path in terms of my life. Up until that point, I was like, why did I choose to be an actor? You know, why didn't I do something useful like engineering, medicine, design, or architecture, or whatever? Why did I choose to be an actor? And I came out of it thinking, you know what, I know why I chose it, because I love stories. And I love the power that stories can have. That play opened itself up to us after that moment, because it was written by people who understood what it was like to have cities crumble around them, to kind of make their way through a war zone, to kind of create this collective history that could be passed on, so that we could be reminded about these things. And it was really invigorating, and it still stands as one of, in terms of the most defining moments for my life as an actor. And that's why the first part of the theme of End is the end of that building, or the end of that era, if you like, and the end of those Twin Towers, which created for me, if you like, a sense of direction. So I'm like, if I could have a little bit more financial control, what would I do? So then I thought, well, I potentially could do some corporate training type stuff. I enjoy teaching. And that day that I thought of it, literally that day, I mentioned it to a friend of mine who was on the couch. And he said, oh, that's what my father does. He's just retired to Thailand. You should call him up and have a chat to him about doing some corporate speaking training and stuff. So I called this guy called Brendan O'Day. So I rang him up. We had this huge conversation on the phone for about two or three hours. And then 2 days later, he called me back and said, I've got a business proposition for you. You could take all of my old business, at the time it was called Speakeasy. You could take all of my old business, all of my old collateral. I'm coming over to do a program. You can sit in it. I'll train you up, and you can take over my business, and you pay me 15% of what you earned for the first 3 years. And I'm like, all right. Hadn't thought about it. He came over. I sat in on the first one, videoed it. It was Simpson Grierson. Never got a job there after that. So it's like, you know, and kind of all of the sort of clients that were promised never really eventuated. So the first couple of years were a real struggle. Basically, all I did was take a video of him and then copy him in terms of his corporate training and presentation skills for the first 3 years, because I thought that would work. And it didn't very well. And so then I thought, well, I really need to make this my own. And at this time, I was balancing this work, because I wanted to be an actor, most of all, and this was really just a supplement to my life as an actor. But then on the other side, I was starting to get more and more clients, and I was kind of getting okay at it and good at it and getting good results. So there were these two poles, if you like, between my life as an artist and my life as like this corporate cannibal, and which way do I go? So it got to a point where I needed to make a decision about one life or another. And it was, the problem with my frame is that I viewed it as one life or another. And I needed to change the frame of how I viewed it in order for me to cope with it more effectively. Because I felt like if I was to devote myself to the business and corporate training, I was somehow selling out my life as an actor and an artist. And that I would be giving away part of the joy that I found in that. And it wasn't until I really consciously reframed that to say to myself, and I literally had to go and write out affirmations that I said every day. And there were things like, I can be an artist and run a successful business at the same time. I will not stop being creative. I will always be creative. Those types of things. And I said them to myself again and again and again until it finally kind of clicked. So I know there's a lot of that self-help stuff out there, but I suppose the important lesson for me is that the narrative that I had around in my own mind was inhibiting my progress. And I needed to consciously try and adapt those two narratives together in something that would work for me. And it took me about a year, but the moment that I did it, I doubled my income from my business in a year. And then I doubled it again the year after that. So it was quite a shift. Now, the thing that really made me shift was another end, and that was the death of my father. Because at that point it was like, all right, now you're really on your own. And maybe not for all families, but for my family, my dad was very much the provider of the family. And so his death, and it was a sudden death and young, kind of made me think, I just really need to focus on this and make this work now. Because you just don't have a backstop. You just kind of have to, it's like you have to hustle. And you just have, when your dad's there and your dad's like this kind of provider, you're always like, oh, it'll be good if something happens. So it's like, Dad, help, But you just don't have that. And it's like, okay, now you just need to grow up and start it. So the second end was that, with the death of my father was a huge influencing factor in me really focusing on my business. And the third end was the stopping of my life as an actor, which happened about 3.5, 4 years ago. When I got a phone call from my agent. Now, if you, I know there's some actors, Bruce at the back, there are a few actors, so you know that part of your defining characteristic is your agent. If you've got an agent, you're on it, right? And they're giving you work. And so when my agent called me and said, we're not going to represent you any longer, it was like you literally get pulled, your life gets pulled with like it's your identity, like I don't have an agent, that's it, I'm not an actor, I had no work. And it was freaky. But she had a good point, and the point was that I was too busy to turn up to auditions, because of course she's not going to want to represent me, I couldn't do it. And so it was at that point, in the end of that, where the other part was like I needed to really focus on creating my business. And so since that point, I really thought, well, the next step is to understand the language of business. Because I had kind of this imposter syndrome with my clients. So I worked with lots of different clients and corporates, anything from Coca-Cola Amatil to Jazzmax to Mercury to Microsoft to Pernod Ricard. So I would always go in there and I'd hear these conversations that people were saying, talking about all these big hyper-learning business words. And I'd be like, that's not right. That's not right. That doesn't make sense to me. But I never felt like I had the confidence or the language to be able to identify what the issue was in a way that would have credibility to them. So I thought, I know what I'll do an MBA. So if I do this MBA, I'm going to learn the language of business, and I'm going to be able to go in there and I'm going to say, well, that's not right because of this and this and this. And guess what? It worked. Because what the MBA gave me, most importantly, was a way of framing my argument in a way that that particular audience could understand what I was saying, and it would have credibility. Right? So it's about understanding the language and the words and how they choose it and what matters. And once I kind of figured that out, not only did it kind of give me a sense of credibility that I felt like I wasn't so much of an imposter, but it also allowed me to kind of take the business up to the next level and start dealing with people who were at that executive and C-suite level in a way that I felt was of value to them. So that was another interesting thing. Now, if you were to ask me 10 years ago, would I ever consider doing a business degree, let alone an MBA, I would have laughed in your face. But like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And now I'm really proud to sit on this weird intersection between art and commerce, because I think in that space is where my business exists and where we offer value to people. We kind of bring the side of what it's like to be an artist and understand the idea of space and communication and connection to people and how to communicate. There's also the idea of business and understanding, well, like if you are a business or an organisation, you have certain responsibilities either to your shareholders or to your stakeholders or to whoever. You need to be able to get good ideas across and communicate those well in order for things to grow and develop and to make a change in things. But that's essentially the flow of how I created and came to the point of my business. We did a big rebrand about a couple of years ago into the Pickering Group. So we originally Speakeasy and we changed into the Pickering Group. And that's about really expanding ourselves up to let us grow over the next 10 years, because up until that point it had been just about me. And anybody who owns a business and realises that if you're the only point, that's a risk, because if suddenly you take you out of the equation, then it's worth nothing, and when you get the business valued, it's like, well, the business is worth nothing because you are the only reason it exists. So the whole strategy is around, if we bring more people on board and create this sense of bigger than we are, and we create programs that can exist and function and add value without me, then maybe in 10 years' time, I can sell it and then go do something else that could be interesting. So that's kind of the plan and where we are now. Yeah, so that's a little bit about my journey and how I got to the point. So now, how am I doing for time? Because I just want to keep an eye on this. How much time have I got?
That's 20 minutes.
So like 10 minutes? Okay, so I thought the second part of what I wanted to talk about is probably an area that I'm a little more comfortable. It's not often that I get a chance to sort of talk about myself, so thank you for listening. It's cool. So it makes me nervous. I'm like, guys, you don't really kind of talk about the death of your father in a scenario. It's like something you feel all sorts of strange things start to happen. So, I thought I'd just leave you with some tips around what I think makes a good communicator, and especially in a creative context. I suppose the biggest thing that I see in the creative areas that I work. So I work with agencies a bit, so I've done work with Barnes Kaplan and Friends, we've done Barnes Kaplan Detsu, Young Shand, Jazzmax, so those sorts of areas people are having to pitch, communicate their messages, creatives having to take their ideas and communicate them to clients, often very business oriented. And I notice a few things. I certainly notice that in the creative field that people tend to be more introverted than extroverted. So I want to throw out a couple of myths. You do not need to be an extrovert to be a good communicator. You don't, and it's a myth if anybody tells you you do. So what you need are basically two really fundamental things. You need a really good understanding of the people that you're talking to. So you need to understand them and who they are as people. What's driving them, what's keeping them up at night, what are they worried about, what are their pressures. And you need to have a really clear, articulated, big idea. The idea really matters. Now, if you think about it, probably there might be one or two people in this room that could name me a world champion Toastmaster of public speaking. Now, they're remarkable speakers, right? Remarkable. But there'd probably be a lot more people in this room that could name me the speaker of their favourite TED Talk. And that's because of the power of ideas, those ideas spread. There are two facts. The creation and execution of great ideas are what propel businesses and organisations forward. If you can communicate your idea with clarity well, it is more likely to be taken seriously than ones that aren't, regardless of how good that idea actually is. Consequently, far too many bad ideas get taken up purely by the power of people in the way that they communicate them. And far too many good ideas don't get the attention and the diligence and the duty that they deserve to be communicated well. So you have a responsibility to your ideas to communicate them well for the betterment of really the organisation of the world. You really do. So the way that I like to construct this for my clients is that, yeah, you'll be nervous about getting up there. but make sure you understand the people that you're talking to. Be really clear on the idea and the value of that idea, and get that right. And then communicate that with your own authenticity. And if you can do that, generally, you'll get it across the line. So, and then there's all this other stuff about like the charismatic communicator, posture, gesture, facial expressions, eye contact, all those things that we think we should be doing effectively. It always, to me, comes down to, do you really understand the people that you're talking to? And are you really clear on what your big idea is, the core insight or the core value of what you're saying? And can you connect those two together? The audience and the idea, because your job is the conduit between those two things. That's all. It's selfless. If you pull yourself out of the way and just let those two things connect, they'll spark. And that's your role as a communicator. Your ideas and your audience, just to connect them together. Now, here's your second one. So, when it comes, certainly, delivery matters, right? And kind of like, I've got this great idea that I thought I'd just show you up here. There's a gazillion bullet points, and I'll just kind of read off the screen to you and kind of just completely defer all of my energy and my power to this. What we do know is that how you frame and construct and communicate your ideas has a measurable empirical effect on how people connect to them, right? So sometimes you can have an idea of equal value, but the one that gets the one across the line is the one that communicates it more effectively, because they can get people excited and engaging around it. So if there was a really simple model that I'd get you to think about, it's what I call the 3 circles. So this is not my idea, it's a wonderful woman called Patsy Rodenberg, who was head of the voice of the Royal National Theatre for a gazillion years, and has worked with every great British actor that you know. So Helen Mirren, Judi Dench, Ian McKellen, you name it. And she's written a great book for us. So if you want to check it out, it's called The Second Circle. The American version is called Presence. And she says that when we communicate and we are put under pressure, up here, with clients, wherever, you will inhabit 3 types of energies as a communicator. And she calls them first, second, or third circle. She says first circle energy people, when they've got an idea that they need to communicate in public and they're under pressure, they will take on the energy of self and withdrawal. So when you feel it, so it might begin to manifest itself as something like this. You might begin to bring tension into your hands, maybe shuffle around a lot on your feet. You might even close yourself physically when you're communicating your ideas like this. You might defer eye contact away from the audience and onto the screen that you're communicating with. You might even talk very quietly. You might bring a lot of hedging statements, and so I guess kind of it's about this, and I suppose you'll enjoy it. But I mean, it's going to be up to you just to take the, it's almost as if all of the energy of the communicator wants to fall back into themselves. And if you're up here in that pressure, if I only can make myself smaller and walk away from the audience when I'm talking to them, I will kind of hide, and then they'll just get the message, right? So that's the first circle. And I said it's probably 70% of the people that I deal with are first circle energy people, right? I'm like, stand your ground, come out, talk to us. You can be nervous, that's cool, let's just stand your ground. So, first circle energy person, the energy of self and withdrawal. Disconnecting from an audience, because the audience is watching and just feels uncomfortable for the person up there, right? We have this empathy. The opposite extreme of that, and equally disconnecting for an audience, and probably 15 or 20% of the people that I work with, are somebody who come into a space, will feel that pressure, those nerves, but rather than withdraw, they will take on the energy of bluff and force. Alright, Creative Mornings, have I got the program for you? This is going to be awesome. We're going to get out there and we're going to do it. It's generalized energy forced outward. It's often really too big for a room. It's over-energized. It's that higher huckster salesperson type deal. It's that feeling when you're watching somebody and you feel pushed away from feel like they're talking at you, not to you. You feel like that the energy is too big or too frenetic for a space. In an interpersonal context, it's somebody who comes up to you and says, "Hi Sarah, how's things?" You go, "Yeah, good to see you," right? And they just stand way too close. And so as a feeling, you just want to back away, right? So that's third circle. So now, when you're put under pressure, everybody in this room will tend either to self and withdrawal or to bluff and force. But she says in the middle, she calls it the energy of connection or presence. She says second circle is the energy of presence and authenticity. if you can stand in that place and just connect to your audience in a way that's authentic to you, not trying to act or pretend to have to be somebody you're not trying to withdraw and apologize for yourself, but just connect to that audience. She says, in that space as a communicator, you are at your most powerful. And I would absolutely agree. And it's a space that we can all be at. There's all sorts of things that we can do to help us get there, right? You can do vocal exercises, you can do all sorts of things. But if fundamentally you understand the people that you're talking to, you have a clear big idea, and you are communicating to them with authenticity and second circle, chances are that's all you need. And if you can do that, then you're on the right track. So I think that kind of takes us to great. So I think we've got time for some questions. So if you want to.
I'm sure there's questions.
What was the most challenging thing about being an MBA, and how did you overcome it? Challenging.
The mathematics. The mathematics was probably the most challenging thing. Statistics, that sort of stuff. And supply chain, all those sorts of things where you have to kind of work out mathematical formulas. I just barely got schools in that. So you just kind of have to drill it. When you get there, and you've got heaps of support, like there's heaps of support there. They want you to succeed. And I ended up doing pretty well in it. But that was definitely the most challenging part. It was just, and the most intimidating for me, was that. But I had a few. Everybody's got different skills there. So I had a few wins early on when people found out that I was a good presenter. So it was like that thing where people didn't want to know you, but then when they find out that you can present, like everybody wants to be your friend, right? Because it's like, he's valuable, I want him on my team. So it's like, it's one of those, it was a really weird thing. It was like, so I felt like that where I lacked in one area, I could make it up for another. So yeah, that was the most intimidating part.
You mentioned before how difficult as a creative can be to communicate the value of your work or things you're doing. Do you have any tips on how can you communicate effectively to decision makers how valuable it is what you're doing, the creative work that you're doing, that is intangible, let's say?
Yeah. I suppose my number one tip is just to understand them as much as you can. Because if you can understand why they're trying to do certain things or why they need it, you can, if you like, work to co-create the solution with them. And they feel like they've got, I suppose people just want to feel like they're part of it and they have buy-in as well, right? So they're like, this is reflecting what I need and what I want. Like all along the way, if you can do that, then generally they're going to be supporting you, you know what I mean? There's this thing that's happening. What I find, and to do that, you kind of need to understand how to communicate in their language. So it's about empathy. If you were sitting across the room from you and you had the pressures of needing to, deliver a rebrand because the business was kind of tanking and, you were under real pressure, there was a time pressure that you needed to get back because there was a quarterly shareholders report that's coming, you needed to show results, and you've got somebody who's communicating their ideas to you that you just are not connecting with or getting, then there's going to be pushback. Whereas if you can, I suppose, understand how your creative ideas are connected to the business functioning and being successful, and you can articulate that, then I think that's really important, right? To understand that ideas are not created because they're pretty. Ideas need to deliver, right? And they need to deliver an outcome and results. And we're having a similar scenario with my business right now. We've got this website which is beautiful and it's looking really well, but it's really struggling to rank organically. So it doesn't matter how beautiful the website is, if it doesn't attract people to it and rank up there in the top with what we offer, then it's pointless, right? So it's about understanding how those two link together. And that would be my number one tip.
Yeah, because nowadays, I guess everything is going towards data. So a lot of people will make decisions, they want to see results. If it's something that, you're applying something financially, you can create, like a forecast, whatever, but when it's art, when it's, when you're creating something, a design, whatever, or you're training someone for doing better sales pitches, they cannot see really like how the money is coming back to them.
Yeah, and actually let me just talk to you about data, because that's really important. Big data is everywhere. But it doesn't mean that everybody's out of the job, because what people can't do is draw insight from big data. And so you need to, one of the things that we really work a lot with people is they've got all of this data, right, that has insight in it. And people don't take ownership for communicating the insight because they feel like they're putting themselves on the line. So it's like, well, so you'll have somebody, these quarterly results and here's a whole bunch of stuff, and notice that it's this and this and this and this and this, and here's all this data. But it's not so much the data that's important, it's the meaning of that data to the audience. How is that data going to make me make better, more effective decisions around my organisation or my business? And tell me what those decisions, what the direction of those decisions should be. That's the job of the communicator. So you have all of this data more than ever we had before, and people are really struggling to take ownership and communicate the value of what that data is saying. And so you'll have people say it, but then they don't want to commit to it because they feel like it's like, oh, what if it's not? So there's all those issues that come with it. But the ability to articulate the insight from data is just worth exploring. It's a huge field that people lack in. Yeah, questions?
Do you have any tips or guidance on how to explain the importance of emotional language to people who are not emotional?
Yeah. If you use stories in the way that you communicate, your audience is 7 times more likely to buy into what you're saying. But you use facts and figures 27 times more frequently than stories. Maybe something like that. Right? If they're kind of data results oriented. That's true. That comes from Chip and Dan Heath. So I suppose the point here is Aristotle said there were 3 types of the way that if you're going to be a persuasive speaker, there are essentially 3 pillars of persuasion, and it's an ancient model, 2,300 years ago, but it still works today. He called them ethos, pathos, and logos. So ethos was the character and credibility of you, the speaker, the communicator, right? And if people see you as credible and of good character, they are far more likely to believe what it is you're going to say. You can tell them a bunch of BS if they see you as highly credible. And they'll be like, oh yeah, that's great. Then you have logos. So logos is your ability to formulate a rational argument, right? Which is things like facts, figures, cost, proof, timing, quality, strategy. Yeah, these are the results. This is how it's going to come out. Then you have pathos, your ability to build an emotional connection with the people that you're talking to, and to that you use stories and anecdotes, beautiful visual aids, props, demonstrations. The reveal, we need to talk about the reveal because it's so powerful for people in the creative world, right? Your reveal, the moment that you reveal the thing, is the most powerful action you have as a communicator. The moment that people see your work for the first time, to show the beautiful logo that you created, the beautiful design that you've done, the way you reveal it, how you construct it's important, and it's emotional to people, and they're waiting for it, they're anticipating it. So you can control that action in a really powerful way. Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, they're the master of the reveal. They know how to reveal a product in this amazing way. So ethos, pathos, and logos, if you can communicate across those 3 spectrums to people, credibility, head, and heart, you're on the right track, I think. Cool. We good for time? Yeah, right.
Do you think it's important to communicate how you've got to that final idea to clients, or to just focus on what it is that you want to reveal to the clients?
It depends. Like, sometimes I'd imagine that I would like to think that the journey helps the idea, right? And if people understand what the thinking of what the journey was, what the story of the idea was, and what you went through to get to the point, then I think that's really important. However, I know for a fact that I can be sitting in there waiting for somebody to reveal, and I'm just like sitting there thinking, okay, I want to just show me the damn thing, right? So you know what I mean? So I don't know the answer to that. Maybe somebody can offer a solution, but I like to think that if we can kind of frame the journey, reveal it in a way, and then finally we get to it and it's like, ta-da! It's like, yeah, that's cool. But then you've got, well, come on, like, like, can you just show me what you've come up with? People are just like, you want to see it. I think it's about getting a feel for what the audience wants, right? And yeah. But we do know there's really interesting research on how you frame ideas before you reveal them has huge influence on the way that people perceive and take in those ideas. So you have opportunities. And when you, for example, when you are in a pitch, your pitch doesn't begin from the moment that you stand up to your clients. It begins from the second that they get out of the car in the building. You are curating that whole experience. The pitch is on, right? I remember working for a client who stacked their agency with twice as many people. So when the client came in, they looked out to the floor and there was twice as many people because the agency is a good agency, right? And then they kind of went in and sat down. So they knew that they didn't want a lot of people to work from home. They didn't want a client to walk in and half the desks were empty. Says the message. So it's like that, the idea of creating the whole experience for people and understanding that from the second that they step into your space, you are in control, and it's either good or bad, and you can create that experience for them. Does that answer your question?